So coming into week 3, we have a Packers versus Saints battle. Jordan Love's first game starting at Lambeau Field against a Saints team that is currently 2-0. The Packers sitting at 1-1 after losing a very close game to Atlanta after being up 24-12 near the end of the third quarter. And so these are two, I would say, pretty evenly matched teams if you take a look at both rosters, offense, defense. And I do think this is going to be a battle, a close battle for that one. And if we start with Jordan Love, he's had a very, very good start to his time here in Green Bay. 2 weeks in, without his top receiver in Christian Watson, without his best offensive lineman in Bakhtiari last week, without one of the Packers' top weapons in Aaron Jones last week. And the Packers were still able, for a majority of the day, until the fourth quarter, to consistently move the ball down the field. Jordan Love has 6 touchdowns, leads the NFL, has yet to throw an interception. For the most part, has done a good job of not putting the ball in harm's way. He had one play last week where it should have been picked, but besides that, he's played very good, clean football for the most part, and that's without some of his top weapons. And now coming into this game, Christian Watson practiced on Wednesday and Friday in a limited capacity. There's a good chance he plays. Aaron Jones practiced the past 2 days. There's a good chance he plays. Just in my opinion, seeing them practice this week, they may not play, but those guys are obviously a huge part of this offense. And just in my mind, the fact that Jordan Love was able to do what he did last week, still throw 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, without 2 of the Packers' top weapons on offense, shows the kind of guy that Jordan Love is. Obviously, we have some other nice weapons on the offense with Musgrave, who's made some nice plays, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks. Some of these guys have made nice plays in big situations. And so that's why I have this confidence that, especially if Watson is in, especially if Aaron Jones is here, that's going to open up this offense even more. And the Packers' rushing attack has struggled without Aaron Jones. A.J. Dillon hasn't done great. The Packers' offensive line, honestly, hasn't really run blocked too great. And so when we look at this matchup, this is a very, very good Saints defense. Right now, they're the 5th best scoring defense in the NFL after 2 weeks, only allowing 16 points per game. They have played the Titans, who I think have one of the worst offenses in the NFL, and the Panthers with a young rookie quarterback who still has a long ways to go in his development. And so that doesn't take away necessarily from what the Saints defense is. I still think just that the talent they have, their ability to pressure the quarterback, their secondary, they have a very, very good defense. But so far, they haven't really played tough competition, like very tough competition. And I think the Packers have a better offense than both the Panthers and the Titans. We've seen Matt LaFleur, his ability to scheme up open receivers. There are tons of easy throws Jordan Love has out there. There are tons of other throws where he's done a pretty good job of fitting it into tight windows. There are definitely lots of things that him and his receivers need to work on. There's definitely been some miscommunication at times where they're just completely off from each other. But all in all, in 2 weeks for the Packers, the offense has looked pretty solid, and that's without Aaron Jones for a lot of the time. And having him in week 1 against the Bears was the reason the Packers were able to really move the ball down the field. The Packers were able to do it last week without Jones for a lot of the time, at least putting up some points. But adding Jones here, adding Watson is going to be a big difference. If we do look at the Saints team, I mean, they have a very good secondary. They will be without their safety in Marcus May. They've got one of the best cornerbacks, Marshawn Lattimore. One thing they've done very, very well in the first 2 weeks is pressure the quarterback. In week 1, facing off against Bryce Young, they pressured him on 48% of dropbacks. That is crazy. That is insane. Week 2, that was last week versus Bryce Young. Week 1, when they faced Tannehill, they pressured him on 42.5% of dropbacks. So this is a defensive line that is very physical, very tough, can clearly pressure the passer. And when we look at the Packers, their offensive line, that is definitely the strength of this team, at least when it comes to pass blocking. We are one of the best pass blocking teams in the NFL. This week, we may be without Bakhtiari again. He is questionable for this game after missing last week's game with some knee swelling coming up. We are without probably our second best offensive lineman in Elton Jenkins, who has a sprained MCL. I just saw a tweet from Rob Demovsky of ESPN inferring that Jenkins doesn't think he may need to go on the IR, which means he could come back in less than 4 weeks potentially, but he won't be playing in this game. And so that means we have Rasheed Walker, 7th rounder at left tackle, Royce Newman at left guard, who has struggled at times in his career. But last week, even with those guys in there, the Packers only allowed 1 sack to the Falcons. I think Rasheed Walker allowed maybe 1 pressure. Royce Newman, it was either 1 or 0. So those guys still played really well. And the strength, or one of the, I think the strengths of the Packers organization for years has been their ability to develop the offensive line, especially when it comes to pass blocking. Because last week, without some of their top players, they still held up really well. So this will be a tougher task, probably the toughest task when it comes to the offensive line that the Packers have had in the past few weeks. And so we'll see if these guys can hold up once again. I think that they'll do a pretty good job. I think that with the physicality of this pass rush, there are going to be some times where they get pressure on Love. But Love, in his 2 starts, has shown a very good ability to escape the pocket. When he needs to run, he can. And that's one thing I like about Love. He doesn't immediately, when he doesn't, have his first read, decide to break away and, run for it. He sits back there, takes the time. But when it's necessary, he'll go out there and he'll run, and he's physical, he's tough, and he can pick up yards with his legs. So all in all, lots of this hinges on, Watson, Aaron Jones, their status on Sunday, David Bakhtiari. Obviously, if all those guys are good to go, the Packers will have a much better shot against this defense. But still, regardless, I do think the Packers have enough to put up points on this team, even without Jones and Watson. Sure, it's harder, and the Packers haven't really had success on the ground with A.J. Dillon, and the run blocking hasn't been great. And so that's definitely an area where the Packers need to improve, and it definitely will if Jones is there with his ability, his explosiveness. Even when the Packers' offensive line doesn't run block great, he can still finagle his way out of those situations, break tackles. He's so elusive. And then if we take a look, switching over to the other side of the ball, with the Saints offense, of course, with Derek Carr coming in here, becoming the quarterback this offseason, so far, he hasn't been amazing. If you look at his stats, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. I think one of the reasons for the Saints' struggles on offense through 2 weeks, where they are ranked as the 25th ranked scoring offense, only scoring 18 points per game in their first 2 games. The biggest reason for that, I think, is the struggles of the offensive line. They have not held up well in week 1. Carr was pressured on 44.7% of dropbacks, sacked 4 times. Last week, slightly better when you look at percent of pressures on dropbacks at 25%, but he was still sacked 4 times. And so right now, he is the 7th most sacked quarterback in the NFL, and that is where the Packers are strong. Their pass rush is very, very good. Some of these got, Devontae Wyatt coming into his second year, Packers first-round draft pick, one of them last year, has played really well when it comes to rushing the passer. We saw it week 1, 6 pressures. Lucas Van Ness, Packers first-round pick this year, has played really well. And Rashawn Gary, still working his way back from his injury, isn't really out there playing a full amount of snaps. But the Packers have still gotten a lot of pressure. Last week, the Packers really struggled against the run. That's definitely the weakness if we look at these first 2 weeks. But they got a good amount of pressure on Desmond Ridder. I think it was around 25 or 26 pressures, according to PFF. And so considering the Saints' offensive line has looked pretty shaky the first 2 weeks, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Packers really take advantage in that regard. I think that if you are the Saints in their offense, you have to look at what the Falcons were able to do last week on the ground and say, maybe we should run the ball a lot. Maybe we should try to, attack that weakness that the Packers showed last week on tape against the Falcons. The Saints, of course, do not have a Bijan Robinson who averaged like 6.5 yards per carry. He was breaking Packers players' ankles all day long, and the Packers really had no answer for him. Joe Barry even tried to bring in an additional interior defensive lineman and still was unable to stop the Falcons' rushing attack. They ran the ball like 45 times for over 200 yards. They, I think, had around 80 plays on offense. And so that's an area where the Packers are weak. If you look at the Saints in the running back situation, of course, Kamara is still out. Jamal Williams is not going to play in this game. So they're pretty thin in the backfield. But if you look at their backfield, right now the leader is Taysom Hill, who, of course, is a weapon, who can play tight end, who can line up back there as the quarterback, can line up as a running back. And right now he is the leading rusher on the Saints with around 79 or so yards. And he leads him with 6.6 yards per carry. So I do wonder if we'll see more of Taysom Hill in this game because the Saints are very thin at the running back position, and Hill has had success running the ball so far this year. And Joe Barry even talked about it in his press conference the past couple of days that the Packers have to plan for Taysom Hill in that offense, because he said basically the Saints offense, there's basically 2 offenses. When Taysom Hill's on the field, it's completely different. You have to prepare a lot more in a different way for that kind of attack. And so you would assume the Saints saw what the Packers lack when it comes to stopping the run, which has been a consistent factor in Green Bay for a very long time. Seems like, it's been a long, long time, but the Packers have really struggled against the run. And so considering that's where they're weak, you would think the Saints try to do that. They haven't found much success, the Saints, in 2 weeks running the ball. They're 24th in yards per carry at 3.4 yards per carry, so they haven't really been able to do too much. They are 8th when it comes to pass yards per game, and the Saints do have tons of really solid weapons. Chris Olave, very, very talented guy. Michael Thomas, coming back from injury, looks pretty good in his first few games. So there are tons of very, very good weapons here, and the Packers maybe without their top corner in Jair Alexander, who didn't play great last week. Drake London definitely outplayed him in last week's game. But Jair, today, it came out that he had a back injury. Not sure how serious it is, but he is questionable for Sunday's game. So if he can't go, I would like to see Carrington Valentine in there. Packers 7th rounder this year, who showed a ton in the preseason. He looks like he plays with so much physicality, and I want to see him more out there if Jair isn't playing. But clearly, if Jair doesn't play, that's going to be a big blow for this Packers defense. But all in all, this is a very good Saints offense. I think they have ability to be much better if they can fix their issues on the offensive line. Who knows if that's going to be able to be fixed? And the Packers, as I said, are strong when it comes to rushing the passer. So I'd assume to see the Saints try to run the ball a lot more, see if they can get it going in that area. And so now for my score prediction for this game. A big factor is that this game is in Green Bay, a home game for the Packers, their first home game of the entire season. Obviously, anytime any team has a home game, there is the advantage there. But I think Jordan Love being his first start at Lambeau Field, I do think the Packers are going to come away with this game. I think it's going to be a very close game. Could come down to the wire, similar to the Falcons last week. Hopefully the Packers can figure out how to play in the fourth quarter, because last week it just didn't happen, unfortunately. But I'm going to give the Packers the win in this one. My score prediction is going to be Packers 20, Saints 17. I think it's going to be a very close game. But let me know what your prediction is in the comments down below. If you haven't subscribed, you want to stay up to date with all things Packers, that is what I cover on this channel. Also, I made a video breaking down the entire Bears situation and just the struggles they're experiencing right now on my second channel, where I cover non-Packers topics. If you want to watch that, I'll leave the link at the top of the description. Click on that. You can check it out. That is all I have for this one. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.